Let us pray. Almighty God, we willingly acknowledge you as the supreme being, most gracious and most merciful. Look down, we beseech you, on us who are members of this Senate, and deign to assist us in the duties that we have to perform on behalf of our beloved country of Trinidad and Tobago. Open our eyes to see the truth and help us to accept it with all its implications into our lives. Direct us, O Lord, in our deliberations, so that setting aside private interests, unwholesome prejudices, and personal affections, we may treat all matters set before us with honesty, courage, and conviction. Through all we say and do in this Senate, may we give glory and honor to your holy name, inspire confidence in our fellow citizens, and make a positive contribution to the peace and prosperity of our nation. Amen.
Announcements by the President.
Honorable Senators, I have received requests for leave of absence from today's sitting of the Senate from the following Senators: Senator Wade Mark, Senator Jillian John, Senator Jayanti Lakshmi Dayal, Senator David Naked, Senator Damian Lyder, Senator Anil Roberts. Honorable Senators, as you are aware, former Independent Senator Dame Louise Horne passed away on Sunday, March 28, 2021. I now invite you to offer tributes.
Madam President, thank you. The Grand Dame of Arima, the Grand Foundress of this country's school feeding program, and the great teacher of the Grand Master Lord Kitchener and others are all appellations so very suitably ascribed to former Independent Senator, the late Dame Louise Mathilda Horne. Born in Arima in May of 1913, Louise Horne distinguished herself in every chapter of her long and meritorious 107-year journey on this earth. The 11th female to ever be appointed to the Senate of Trinidad and Tobago, she was appointed to serve in the first, second, and third Republican Parliament from 1976 to 1991. Former President Sir Ellis Clarke remarked that so invaluable was her contribution to the working of the Senate, I appointed her again for 2 consecutive terms. This is testimony to the fact that she took the business of the people of Trinidad and Tobago very seriously, that she showed up on every occasion, and during her 15 years contributed in real and meaningful ways to the debates surrounding the governance of this country. The fibers of Louise Horne included threads named teacher, lecturer, advisor, author, social worker, and nutritionist, and combined with title Independent Senator, the woven tapestry that was Louise Mathilda Horne was undoubtedly a blanket for the vulnerable in society. It was Dame Louise who tabled the issue for the need of a national nutrition program, which led to the successful implementation of the school feeding program, which to this date is relevant, necessary, and beneficial to the young minds being schooled and shaped in our land. In November of 2004, Louise Horne was awarded the Order of St. Gregory by Pope John Paul II and was bestowed the title Dame. This ceremony took place in the Santa Rosa RC Church in Arima, where she worshipped, volunteered, and served. Dame Louise was feisty, passionate, and a sprightly spirit who loved life, who loved people, and who championed those less fortunate. Yet she was one who walked with kings and queens and never lost the common touch. She is what we in Arima call Jarim, a title given to those of us who are born in Arima and whose navel strings are buried there. She transcended politics and the political divide and was revered by all. All Arima political personalities befriended her and were all beneficiaries of her vast knowledge and wisdom. She is highly regarded as an icon, a legend, and a champion of and for Arima. She was passionate about the reconstruction of the Arima Hospital and was delighted to have been informed of its completion and opening in 2020. On a personal note, Madam President, I had the pleasure and privilege of knowing Dame Louise, or Auntie Louise as many of us called her, for the entirety of my life. She lived across the street from my godparents, the Mirages in Arima, whose home I frequented, and I was blessed to have had many opportunities for tea, interaction, conversation, and life lessons. Further, we both worshipped in Santa Rosa RC Church, and we were both lectors at the 7 a.m. Mass. All of the young ones aspired to be like Dame Louise. Her enunciation, diction, and oratory delivery were as legendary as the fact that she sat in the same seat, in the same pew, every weekend, without fail, with an unspoken understanding amongst worshippers that that was her seat and hers alone. Madam President, on behalf of the government of Trinidad and Tobago, I extend deepest condolences to her godson, Dr. Lennox Pear, her friends, her loved ones, and all in Arima. Our country is so much richer for having had her traverse this land. What a life well lived. Rest in God's eternal peace, Dame Louise. Thank you for your faithful service.
Senator Richards.
Thank you, Madam President. Good afternoon, colleagues. It's my deep honor to pay tribute to this patriot on behalf of the members of the independent bench. She epitomized service, dedication, sacrifice, and patriotism. She lived as a shining example of national service. She blazed a trail for much of what we take for granted and do in this august house today, having made sterling contributions to over 150 bills at a time when she did not have Google or Bing to search for information or research her noteworthy contributions. Dame Louise Horne served as an independent senator from 1976 to 1991, making her one of the longest-serving senators in the history of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Dame Louise was first appointed as an independent senator in 1976 by His Excellency Sir Ellis Clark. She was also a successful senator, and the President reappointed her to 2 further terms of office in the Senate. Dame Louise was awarded the honor of St. Gregory by Pope John Paul II, and henceforth would carry the title Dame Louise Horne. She was awarded this title on Sunday, November 7, 2004, for her service as a Roman Catholic to her parish community and the Catholic community of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. She distinguished herself as a nutritionist and served as a chief nutrition officer in the government service, as well as in an earlier career as a teacher. She was an educator at heart. In fact, one of her former pupils was Calypsonian, the well-known globally Lord Kitchener, Mr. Aldwin Roberts. She's been involved in several service non-governmental organizations in Trinidad and Tobago, such as the Courtier of Social Services, the Arima Community Welfare Council, and Trinidad Tobago's Blind Welfare Association. Her life has always been and continued to be oriented around service to her countrymen. In 1992, she was awarded Trinidad Tobago's Medal of Merit, Gold, for her work in the field of dietetics and in the public service. She was also honored on a postage stamp that commemorated the 1980 decade of women. In her invaluable history book, The Evolution of Modern Trinidad Tobago in 2004, she writes that she considered herself fortunate to be living during the most important era in the life of her country. At that time, she still led a quite active life, which included participation at meetings of the Trinidad Tobago branch of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. She had many memberships and committees in the Parliament, including the Regulation Committee, the Joint Select Committee in 1977, the Committee of the Senate to consider the Federation of Women's Institutes Bill in 1977, Select Committee of the Senate to consider the Wesleyan Holiness Church, the Standing Orders Committee in 1978, the Standing Orders Committee also in 1979, the Regulations Committee in 1982, and the Joint Select Committee to consider consumer protection legislation and law reform legislation, and the Hindi-Nindi Committee, among several others. On behalf of the members of the independent bench, we send condolences to her family and thank her and them for their sacrifices and her sacrifice on behalf of a grateful and beloved nation. Thank you.
Honourable Senators, I too wish to join in paying tribute to the late Dame Louise Horne. Dame Louise Horne, as we have heard, served as an independent senator in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Republican Parliament from September 1976 to November 1991. The length of time of her service is noteworthy enough. It is also noteworthy that she was the lone female independent senator in the 1st Republican Parliament and one of only 5 female senators altogether during that period. In the 2nd Republican Parliament, once again, she was one of the 4 female senators, as in the 3rd Republican Parliament. Clearly a trailblazer who paved the way for all of us female parliamentarians who are serving decades after she did. Her contributions to the debates were scholarly and her commitment to this institution unparalleled. I am told that Dame Louise Horne encouraged civil debate by never talking down to others. Rather, she communicated across. She possessed a value system of mutual respect. In fact, one of her favorite quotations was, "Where respect is lost, there can be no living." In 2001, some 10 years after she ceased being a senator, she continued to show interest and her support of the Parliament when she took the time to attend an annual general meeting of the local branch of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. Senator Horne, as we know, was a teacher, a voluntary social worker, and an author. She, even as she served her country in the Parliament, continued to serve her beloved Arima, the place where she was born and had lived her entire life. She never lost the feisty spirit of which Senator Lizama Leasing spoke. In fact, one of her favorite stories was of her fighting off bandits who invaded her home at Lopez Street, Arima. We pay tribute to a truly remarkable human being, someone who served her country, her community, and her church. We extend our deepest sympathy to the family of the late Dame Louise Horne, but acknowledge at the same time and celebrate a beautiful, well-lived life, a life that was steeped in service and faith. May she rest in eternal peace. Honourable Senators, we will now, please, I ask you to stand and allow us to observe a minute of silence. Please be seated. Honourable Senators, I instruct the clerk to convey to her family the sentiments that have been expressed today.
Papers.
Minister of Social Development and Family Services.
Madam President, I have the honor to lay on the table the following papers as listed on the order paper in my name. The annual administrative reports of the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services for the periods 2016-2017 and 2017-2018.
President.
Thank you, Madam President. I have the honor to lay on the table the following paper as listed on the order paper in my name. The 33rd Annual Report of the Integrity Commission of Trinidad and Tobago for the year ended December 31st, 2020.
Minister of Works and Transport.
Madam President, I have the honor to lay on the table the following paper as listed on the order paper in my name. The Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Extension of Period for Payment of 50% of Fixed Penalty Order 2021. Thank you.
Minister of Trade and Industry.
Madam President, I have the honor to lay on the table the following paper as listed on the order paper in my name. The consolidated financial statements of the Trinidad and Tobago Bureau of Standards for the year ended September 30th, 2019. Thanks.
Acting Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I have the honor to lay on the table the following papers as listed on the order paper in the names of the Minister of Finance and the Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister. The annual audited financial statements of the Vehicle Management Corporation of Trinidad and Tobago Limited for the year ended September 30th, 2015, and the annual report of the Children's Authority of Trinidad and Tobago for the year ended September 30th, 2019. Thank you.
Reports from committees.
Agriculture, Land and Fisheries.
Madam President, I have the honor to present the following report as listed on the order paper in my name. The second interim report of the Joint Select Committee appointed to consider and report on the Cannabis Control Bill 2020, first session 2020-2021, 12th Parliament. Thank you.
Urgent questions, questions on notice, questions for oral answer.
Acting Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, the government is prepared to respond to the urgent questions which were posed and is also prepared to respond to on the questions on notice, questions 82, 89, 90, 91, 115, 116, and 117. And we're asking, Madam President, respectfully, for deferral of question number 127 on notice. The government is also responding to written question 126 and 92. And we're asking, Madam President, respectfully, for a deferral on 114 and 125. Thank you.
Question number 127 is deferred for 2 weeks. Question number, are you in a position to answer 125? No, 126, Minister?
Written response on 126 will be circulated, Madam President.
Ryan.
Thank you, Madam President. Question number 115 to the Minister of Planning and Development.
Acting Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, in response to the first part of the question, the government understands the benefits of having access to reliable statistical data as a vital tool for the effective decision making. The timely and accurate data is sourced from the gross domestic product data. It's always been of utmost importance to this government as it recognizes that GDP is one of the most widely used measures of an economy's output and production. The Ministry of Planning and Development, Madam President, also notes that reliable GDP data allows policymakers, economists, and businesses to analyze the impact of variables such as monetary and fiscal policy, economic shocks, and tax spending plans. As such, Madam President, the proclamation of a bill similar to the bill that was brought in the 11th Parliament to establish the National Statistical Institute of Trinidad and Tobago, which would grant greater access to the relevant non-identifiable VAT data, is critical for accurate GDP estimates. The government recognizes the benefits of such a bill and has prioritized it in its legislative agenda. Madam President, it should be noted that the CSO currently has GDP data for the period 2019 to 2020. The data is collected by several surveys administered by the CSO, such as the surveys of domestic production and survey of retail prices, or directly from data provided by stakeholders such as the Ministry of Energy. Additionally, a survey of establishments is undertaken to acquire annual data from business and other entities involved in economic activity, and this data is subsequently used to provide annual benchmark estimates for the current value of economic output. Further to this, Madam President, the CSO continues to work closely with the various stakeholders and with the IMF, the Center for Caribbean Technical Assistance Center, to improve and develop its price and volume indicators, and more generally, GDP estimates. Finally, as an interim measure, the CSO has signed an MOU with the Board of Inland Revenue on February 14, 2020, which has granted access to non-identifiable VAT data. Under this agreement, the CSO committed to provide training and assistance to the BIR officers in the coding of establishments. It sought to ensure that the availability of properly coded VAT data can further enhance the timeliness and accuracy of GDP estimates. Madam President, as a result of what I've just said, the response to part 2 of the question is not required. Thank you.
Senator Dinarine.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Minister, could you advise that given the prioritization of the National Statistical Institute on the legislative agenda of the government, is there a timeline in which you are looking at to bring this piece of legislation to the Parliament?
Minister.
President, the government recognizes that we are a few months away from the end of this first year of the 12th Parliament, and the government intends to have the bill laid before the end of this first year of the 12th Parliament. Thank you.
Okay. Next question, Senator Dinarine.
Madam President, I have a supplemental.
No longer. Yes, sure, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Honorable Minister, for your response. Now, in your initial response, you indicated that there has been improvements in the calculation of GDP figures, and surveys are being used and sent to businesses. Initially, there has been a problem with the response rate of these surveys. What is currently being done to improve the response rate of these surveys by businesses used to calculate the GDP figures?
Minister.
Madam President, quite honestly, I am not in a position to provide a response to that, but I'm quite prepared to undertake to put it in writing and have it delivered before the next sitting.
Next question, Senator Dinarine.
Question number 116 to the Minister of Finance.
Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam President. I actually came to answer question 90 as well. If I'd known, I'd have given my honorable colleague the responsibility to answer 116. It's very simple. Madam President, regulations to give effect to the public procurement, retention and disposal of public property should be laid in Parliament in May of 2021.
Senator Dinarine.
117 to the Minister of National Security.
Acting Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I thank this Senator for the question. Madam President, I want to first make it very clear that the Pradial Larceny Squad, which forms part of the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, really provides assistance to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and is not a crime-fighting squad independent of the TTPS. So the Pradial Larceny Squad was established in 2013 and was as a result of a study on the nature and extent of pradial larceny in Trinidad and Tobago, which was commissioned 5 years before by the Ministry of Land, Agriculture, Land and Marine Resources, as it was known then. Madam President, with respect to the part of the question, part 2, the Pradial Larceny Squad operates from 4 divisions in the country: the Eastern Division, Northern Division, and Central Division, South Division. And the areas which are served in the Eastern Division, places like Sulibia, Oropouche, Sangre Grande, Manzanilla, Plomita, Ecclesville, Poole, and Rio Claro. Northern Division, Comoto, Heights of Guanapo, Wallafield, Arima, Blanchishes, Aripo, Mausica, Piaco, Wallafield, Trincity, Lopino, Pagia, and Macoya, Cora. The Central Division, Caroni, Cunupia, Las Lomas, Chaguanas, Talparo, Carlsonfield, Tudds Road, Caparo, Freeport, and Chiclan. And finally, in the Southern Division, Cedras, Gasparillo, Oropouche, Point Fortin, Tablan, New Grant, Princestown, Pinal, Debe, Moruga, Bastia, La Luna, and St. Croix. So, Madam President, with respect to part 3 of the question, the squad operates in the 4 divisions and all are active at this time. Thank you.
Senator Dinnerine.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, through you, Honorable Minister, could you advise if in all of these station districts, whether resources such as vehicles are available for readily responding to requests by farmers who have reports of pradial larceny?
Minister.
Madam President, as the Minister with responsibility for this, I would say that the vehicles are available, they are abused, they have been destroyed, particularly in the hands of the leadership of the squad. So the taxpayers of this country provide vehicles and equipment. They are used for various private enterprises, and many times they are not available for the use by the officers for responding to calls by farmers. It is something that we've been addressing, and it has proven to be a difficulty to keep the vehicles on the road. But even now, as we have a newly appointed superintendent and assistant superintendent in the service, they were just appointed, maybe formally appointed in the last 2 weeks, and they have been charged with the responsibility, as they should be, to take ownership of these issues of absenteeism, abuse of equipment, and various things in the pradial larceny squad, so that the squad can be effective in supporting the TTPS in dealing with the matter of pradial larceny.
Senator Dinnerine.
Thank you, Madam President. Given the response, Madam President, through you, Honorable Minister, could you advise whether there is a timeline for the superintendents, recently appointed superintendents, to report to you on rectifying these challenges that they are put there to address?
Minister.
Madam President, I don't know if to say fortunately or unfortunately, they do not report to me, but the permanent secretary has been given very clear instructions, and I hope that the newly appointed superintendent and assistant superintendent will report to her and satisfy her in relation to the care of these assets, but before that, the availability of the assets, because they are assets that have to be brought back into functional state.
Okay.
Public business, government business, bills, second reading.
Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I beg to move that an act to amend the electronic payments into and out of, a bill to amend the Electronic Payments into and Out of Court Act 2018 be now read a second time. Madam President, there is an air of peace and calm in this chamber, like none other that I have experienced in the Senate in the 11 years that I have been in Parliament now this year. It is refreshing to approach the holy month of Ramadan tomorrow and to have this form of peace descend upon us. May it continue for as long as it must. Madam President, it gives me great pleasure to move a very simple amendment to a very important piece of law, and I don't propose to use my entire time at all, because I think that we are all literally on the same page, if I can be so bold-faced to say that today. Madam Speaker, Madam President, we propose an amendment to the parent law, which is the Electronic Payments into and Out of Court Act 2018. That act was an act of Parliament which by its name obviously implies and certifies that we had caused an exception to the Constitution by allowing for parent law in the form of this legislation to be born. The parent law very simply establishes the fact that collectors of revenue can be situated in the court. It allows for electronic payments to be made. The electronic payments are done in a very precise fashion where we treat with the various types of money that a court can actually accept. Those monies are defined in Section 5 of the Parent Act into the forms of fees, fines, and trust monies. Fees speak for themselves. Fines speak for themselves. Trust monies are of various types. Monies belonging to someone else. Maintenance payments, other forms of money, payments into court, payments in respect of security for costs, etc. That we have allowed to pass through the signatories defined in the parent legislation with the two-step authentication there, and for the establishment of custodial bank accounts. The law specifically made this Payments into and Out of Court Act subject to Section 116 of the Constitution. Section 116 of the Constitution is simply the acknowledgement that public accounts will be audited by the Auditor General. There has arisen a question, and out of an abundance of caution, and only an abundance of caution, we have sought to bring to life the provisions of Section 112 of the Constitution. Section 112 of the Constitution makes it pellucidly clear that you may have an establishment of a consolidated fund which treats with all revenue or other monies raised or received by Trinidad and Tobago not being revenues or other monies payable under the Constitution or any other law into some other public fund established for a specific purpose. First of all, I will say what this law proposes to do is very simple. The bill proposes that where electronic payments are to be made into court, the judiciary of Trinidad and Tobago may, by agreement with the financial intermediary that it's doing business with, cause bank charges, credit card charges, debit card charges, chargeback, administrative or other fees to be deducted from the custodial bank account referenced in Section 5.1 and 5.2 of the Act. In other words, these fall within the category of payments that do not stand as public monies and do not stand as revenue, quite simply. The payment of a bank card fee, the 3% transaction fee if you use your credit card to make an electronic payment, what this law proposes to do is to allow for net payments to be received by the state and not gross payments. If we don't take this step, there will be a small bit of confusion in the mind of the Treasury. In the mind of the Treasury, it could be viewed, whilst manual systems coexist with electronic systems, that the credit card charges, etc., would have to be collected by the state and then paid out a month later under a manual system. What this law does is that it, by an act of Parliament, in keeping with the supreme law of Trinidad and Tobago, Section 112 of the Constitution, allows for an act of Parliament to say what happens with charges. All that we are saying is that the charges may be deducted at the point of the transaction so that the money which belongs to the bank goes to the bank, and that we take into effect the automatic clearing on a daily basis by way of electronic transaction record keeping on a real-time basis. This law quite simply takes into perfection the methodology that is required to allow for real-time transactions. Unlocking this key allows the Treasury to move with a very calm mind into allowing the opening of the accounts by the Treasury for the judiciary. That is the custodial accounts, which are of two kinds: that which is intended to collect revenue in fines and fees, and that which is intended to be open for payments which are in trust, the maintenance money that belongs to someone else, the security for costs that belongs to someone else, those trust monies. This allows us to carry out the perfection of removing physical attendances from the courts. By this particular stroke of law, you will be allowed to sit in your bedroom at midnight, at 2 a.m., whenever you are minded to do your transaction work. Use your credit card online, use your debit card online, use your other forms of payment online, and avoid having to go to the court to line up to hand over cash transactions. It's important in a structure such as COVID, as we learn to coexist with the pandemic, that we remove the congregation of persons from the mix, that we carry out the ease of doing business. I will remind that in 2018, when I was piloting this law, I was met with a lot of jaundice and criticism coming from the opposition bench. Back then, it could not be contemplated that you could file documents electronically at the court. Now, that is a standard feature. Nobody attends at court to file documents. Back then, the payment of court filing fees had to be done in person. Now, that is a thing of the far distant past. Back then, the payment of the vast majority of transactions, which is in fact the motor vehicle and road traffic transactions, 104,000 cases per year. Out of the entire magistracy pot of 146,000, the vast majority of those cases where the fines for motor vehicle and road traffic offenses were given, back then in 2018, it was a far distant possibility for the opposition at least to contemplate what came to life on May 26, 2020, when we turned on the e-trafficking system, and you're now allowed to decentralize your payments across Tobago and Trinidad to pay things without having to go to the court. Today we laid, by way of papers, the Minister of Works and Transport, item 4 on the order paper, the motor vehicles and road traffic extension of period for payment of 50% of fixed penalty order 2021. That order allows for the extension of the 50% sale of the 90,000 motor vehicle and road traffic fines that are outstanding. In other words then, we are today providing an unlocked opportunity for the people of Trinidad and Tobago to pay their fines for motor vehicle and road traffic, to pay their fines for mask wearing, to pay their fines levied by the court by way of any order of the court, to pay maintenance, to continue to pay maintenance because court pay is in proper operation, to continue to pay for filing fees and other arrangements, and all of this without having to leave your home. This, Madam President, constitutes the continuation of a government committed to work for the people of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. This constitutes a celebration of the sharp-minded, aggressive reforms led by the Honorable Chief Justice, Mr. Justice of Appeal Ivor Archie. This carries out the digitization of our economy, and I'm very pleased to say, as the minister that had the responsibility to promote this legislation and these structures, that in 2018, we had the foresight to do what is now reality in Trinidad and Tobago. I'll end by saying, Madam President, that This government gives a continued pledge to work for the benefit of the peace, order, and good governance of our society. We will turn up every single time. We will do our jobs. We will continue to persevere under the unjustified criticisms brought against the government by a now lost opposition, and we are determined to carry Trinidad and Tobago into better days. With these few words, I beg to move.
Honourable Senators, the question is that a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Electronic Payments into and Out of Court Act 2018 be now read a second time. Those in favour say aye. No, I'm sorry, just 1 second. Yes. Sorry. Those against say no. I apologize. Honourable Senators, I shall now propose the question for debate. The question is that a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Electronic Payments into and Out of Court Act 2018 be now read a second time. Senator Dylan Remy.
Thank you, Madam President. Attorney General, I have one question for you because I still am not clear. Who pays the charges for the credit card? Normally, right now, there are some vendors who increase the charges so that they don't have to pay it. What will happen in the case of the judiciary? Who pays those charges for credit cards?
Madam President, and I'm not assuming that the Honourable Senator has ended her delivery. Right now, the customer, by electing to pay for the transaction, takes the 3% charge. So we have arranged with all of the credit card providers, MasterCard, Visa, First Atlantic, any one of the intermediary entities, financial intermediaries. The system that has been developed and approved by the Treasury is that the person who chooses to use the electronic transaction will pay the 100% that is due, plus the percentage that is due by way of transaction fee. So it is on the client utilization by a voluntary methodology, and that way we didn't have to do the reconciliation of the intermediary charge. So just like it is when you buy a top-up card for your phone, as most people will be accustomed to that, you're buying a $100 card, you'll pay $100 plus the fee. So that has been put into successful operation at the TT Post end of the equation where this works already. The charge is 100% that is due, and you pay your 3%. At the Ministry of the Attorney General, which I should say is the first ministry in the Caribbean to go live with electronic payments, it is the same transaction that's in effect. So it is a net transaction, goes to the Treasury, in this case the Consolidated Fund, or the Maintenance and Other Positions Trusts, and the person who's electing to do the transaction electronically bears the charge, as they would always have, by way of agreement. The commercial side of the equation is slightly different. On the commercial side, the merchant pays the 3% charge, but that's by way of agreement. The ease with that is that the merchant is not complicated by the Consolidated Fund. So to reconcile the transaction would mean that we would have to do it every month. And that, when you look at it in the context of $21 million or $250 million, if you're looking at motor vehicle and road traffic charges, that would become a nightmare. So those who wish to pay electronically, they pay the sum plus the percentage, and that has been working very well so far.
Madam President, yes, it has been working very well so far in the family court. That's where this is it's rolled out right now.
It's working at the family court. It's working at the Ministry of the Attorney General, Registrar General's Division. It's working at the U-turn system, which is the motor vehicle and traffic offences, which run via the TT Post decentralization system. So there are 3 places that are fully at work. And of course, in the maintenance transactions if you engage in the court pay system pursuant to an order of the court. So there are multiple areas that is all at work.
Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Richards.
Thank you, Madam President. Good afternoon again, colleagues. And my contribution will be quite short, as was Senator Dillon Remy's. And it's just a couple of questions to the Attorney General. Certainly this move on this bill today, certainly this move is toward moving the court system in Trinidad and Tobago to a more digitized environment, which certainly is welcomed, given what we've seen of COVID-19 and what we've seen in terms of some quick research is that the global economy declined in terms of cash transactions by 6% between 2006 and 2016. And we've also seen economies like Canada moving toward stopping the printing of money for obvious reasons, and the potential for surveillance of economies is also counteracted by the potential for digital crime, including fraud, unauthorized access, and data breaches. The very question through you, Madam President, that Senator Dillon Remy posed opens up quite a bit of conversation through you to the Attorney General about if this is part of an overall policy to move Trinidad and Tobago's economy to a digitized, cashless economy, as many of the economies in the world have been doing, in terms of electronic payment systems, as with the courts, and if the country has put in place at this stage, moving through the courts, which is a significant move, the infrastructure, digital protections, accountabilities, and redundancies in place for that type of digital society. One of the challenges that many of the countries, and developed countries at that, encountered while moving in this direction was the fact that, as per usual, many of the vulnerable groups, including the elderly and those in remote rural areas, were left at a significant disadvantage in terms of moving in this direction. And I hope the Attorney General can clarify what systems are in place to facilitate those persons. We've seen what COVID has done in terms of the education sector alone and the gaps that we have uncovered in that regard. So, as I said, I'm going to be very short. I'm just hoping that the AG can identify the systems that have been put in place, in addition to the public awareness campaign to deal with public concerns and queries, as some of those were raised by Senator Dillon Remy. Thank you.
Senator Sipasad.
Just want to pose a question to the Attorney General, please. Honorable Attorney General, I was concerned about two things. Are ACH transactions going to be allowed as well under this system? And were you able to negotiate down the fees charged by the various credit card and financial institutions? Because when I did some research, I mean, it could be as high as 5%, which is quite significant, a quite significant charge. And I would imagine you have bulk transactions, so you're in a position to negotiate down these fees. Thank you, Madam President.
Attorney General.
Madam President, I will quickly answer the last bit of questions put to me. Yes, ACH transactions are permitted. It's permitted pursuant to the Parent Act, and it's defined in the Act, including how we define ACH, etc. Of course, we have a host of other laws that operate in tandem with this. There's the Constitution, there's the Exchequer and Audit Act, there is the Electronic Transactions Act, there's the Exchequer Audit Electronic Funds Transfer Regulations 2015, there's the Electronic Funds Transfer Crime Act, and we have the financial regulations, etc., that coexist with these things. And all of them are intended to be in harmony with each other. As to the question as to whether we've negotiated down the transaction fees, at the Ministry of the Attorney General, I can say certainly yes, and they've been applying a similar standard across the base, because Treasury, i.e. Minister of Finance, is the one that negotiates the contracts on behalf of the ministries. If you look at the definition of department and other positions at Section 23B of the Exchequer and Audit Act for Electronic Funds Transfer, you will see that those things are clearly defined. So yes, we are negotiating in a bulk transaction to get the best benefit. And as we now progress to the first set of questions put by Senator Richards, ties into some of the underpinnings that Senator Sipasad asked. Yes, the policy of the government is to aggressively move to electronic transactions. Yes, the policy of the government is to treat with the unbanked. The term that we use for the people that don't have access to credit card or debit card, etc., is the unbanked. And this act, the Electronic Payments Into and Out of Court Act, was the first piece of legislation in Trinidad and Tobago to deal with the unbanked. Because when you look to the structure of the legislation, we allowed for the issuance of a card by the judiciary, similar to a top-up card. So if you were unbanked, you didn't have a credit card, you didn't have an account, what the judiciary did by way of legislation in the 2018 legislation is we created the unbanked opportunity, where you get a judiciary card, similar to what the Ministry of Social Development does with its food payment structures as we deal with food support mechanisms. So the government is extremely aware of the unbanked in our society. It's why we have aggressively pushed to make sure that they are treated with dignity the same way. Cashless society can operate by incorporating the unbanked difficulty. It's why peer-to-peer transactions are going to be a solid feature of where we go. We have with us Senator Bacchus, who is a leading expert. We have with us Senator West, who is the minister with full responsibility, together with Minister Bacchus, as we drive the solution for the unbanked. This, in the last bit of response, deals with fraud, it deals with following the money, it deals with avoiding people being arrested for things that they've paid for. There were far too many cases of persons who were in maintenance structures where outstanding warrants were on the bench for people who had paid, but the court records were lost. Those are things of the past because we now have e-vote books, we have e-transactions. A person who participates in the court pay system on the app can see when the payment is made, and the person who paid knows when it is paid. So if there's any warrant that is issued for somebody mistakenly, that's dealt with immediately. We are in a dramatically better place than we were before. And I would like to say, as I end, this is how you... Yes, please, Senator Vera.
Thank you. Honorable Attorney General, thank you very much for allowing me. I was just wondering, where are we in terms of capacity? Have we experienced any teething problems so far? I'm thinking too in terms of the ease of doing business. So are we ready with all the various courts and registries throughout Trinidad and Tobago?
Thank you, Senator Vera. I can confirm that we are fully ready. As of October last year, we were ready. The final ironing out, what we've done carefully at the judiciary's end and at the AG's end, because we were test piloting the lead together with Ministry of Works and Transport, you notice none of our systems have failed. It's because we went into beta testing. We did not deliver an alpha product before we did the beta testing. And we did our beta testing in the AG's office for the Registrar General system. We did it for up to 2 years with all of the stakeholders. We tested the environment, we checked the position, we made sure to get this position right, to get it into gear. So the anti-fraud mechanisms, the ease of doing business mechanisms, we're about to take that on steroids, literally, as at the AG's office, again, we will be taking lead on the property business real estate solution and on the electronic filing. You will not need to walk in to file any company's document, any registration document. You already don't need to go for birth certificates, etc. Minister West will lead the charge on the first bedside registration for a birth. Minister West and Minister Bacchus will lead that charge, and the horizon is immediately upon us. These are very exciting times. Times for... Would you like me to give way? Sorry?
I have a couple questions for you, please. Under the Parent Act, Section 15, the Rules Committee established under Section 77 of the Supreme Court of Judicature Act may make rules of court for carrying into effect the provisions of this Act. My question is, have these rules been drafted? Have they been put into operation? And so that's one question. Now, you will recall that there was quite a bit of correspondence.
Senator Thompson, I perhaps let the Attorney General respond.
Questions on...
No, let's do it this way, Attorney General.
As you please, Madam
Yes.
President. My pleasure. The answer is yes, the rules have been drafted, and we are all set and ready to go. Do you have another question?
Just drafted, they have not yet enforced or anything.
No, rules are in place already. And there are further rules that will come upon us as well. There are practice directions and there are rules as well.
There were some concerns about the fact that money that is paid from fines and so in criminal matters coming into the judiciary and the question of blurring of the separation of powers. Have these been addressed?
Well, that was an argument that we had dealt with in the course of debate, which most respectfully does not arise. The judiciary has, since the creation of the judiciary, received fines. They have forever received fines, fees, and trust monies since the judiciary existed, even before we became an independent republic. So those arguments that were brought about back in 2018 about the blurring of the separation of powers did not stand scrutiny in the face of the history of the judiciary. Certainly, if you look to the Exchequer and Audit Act, which predates the Independence Constitution, it's also provided inside of there, as well as the Constitution. And again, that is an artificiality, most respectfully, to those who had raised the concerns about the separation of powers, because then if that is the case, the judiciary should never be the beneficiary of appropriation monies under a coordinating minister such as the Attorney General. There's a confluence of operation of structures. I'm not sure if you have any further questions for me. No?
Attorney General, perhaps you can continue your winding up.
Madam President, I beg to move.
Honourable Senators, the question is that a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Electronics Payments into and Out of Court Act 2018 be now read a second time. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it.
An Act to Amend the Electronic Payments into and Out of Court Act 2018.
Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, in accordance with Standing Order 66-1, I beg to move that the Electronic Payments into and Out of Court Act Amendment Bill 2021 be committed to a committee of the whole Senate forthwith to be considered clause by clause.
Senators, the question is that the Electronic Payments into and Out of Court Amendment Bill 2021 be committed to a committee of the whole Senate forthwith to be considered clause by clause. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. The Senate shall now go into committee of the whole to consider the bill clause by clause. Attorney General, you ready?
Yes, please.
Clauses 1 to 3.
Honourable Senators, the question is that clauses 1 to 3 stand part of the bill. The question is that clauses 1 to 3 now stand part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Clauses 1 to 3 now stand part of the bill. Honourable Senators, the question is that the bill be now reported to the Senate. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. The bill will now be reported to the Senate. Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam President. I wish to report that the Electronic Payments into and Out of Court Amendment Bill 2021 was considered in Committee of the Whole and approved without amendments. I now beg to move that the Senate agree with the committee's report.
Honourable Senators, the question is that this Senate agree with the committee's report on the Electronic Payments into and Out of Court Amendment Bill 2021. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Attorney General.
Madam President, I beg to move that a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Electronic Payments into and Out of Court Act 2018 be now read a third time and passed.
Honourable Senators, the question is that a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Electronic Payments into and Out of Court Act 2018 be now read a third time and passed. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it.
A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Electronic Payments into and Out of Court Act 2018. Motions.
Attorney General.
Madam President, I beg to move the following motion standing in the name of the Minister of Health. Whereas it is provided by Section 4 of the Quarantine Act, Chapter 2805, hereinafter referred to as the Act, that the Minister of Health may make regulations with respect to the whole or any part of Trinidad and Tobago, including the ports and coastal waters thereof, for preventing a danger to public health from ships or aircraft or persons or things therein arriving at any place, and b, the spread of infection by means of any ship or aircraft about to leave any place, or by means of any person or thing. And whereas it is provided by the said Section 4 of the Act that regulations made under this section shall be subject to the affirmative resolution of Parliament, and whereas the Minister has, on the 4th day of February 2021, made the Quarantine Maritime Amendment Regulations 2021, hereinafter called the regulations, and whereas the regulations were laid in the House of Representatives on the 5th day of February 2021, and whereas it is expedient to approve the regulations, be it resolved that the Quarantine Maritime Amendment Regulations 2021 be approved. Madam President, I am pleased to deliver this motion on behalf of my colleague, as I've just indicated. It's why I guess it is quite prudent that the Attorney General drafts the laws in any event, so you're always ready at a moment's notice to take up the work of the Parliament. Madam President, we have before us the affirmative resolution of the quarantine regulations. They are effectively very straightforward. There are 4 substantive matters that we seek to do. The first of all is the removal of the term deratization certificate and also deratization exemption certificate. We are instead proposing to substitute those terms with ship sanitation control certificate or ship sanitation control exemption certificate. Secondly, we propose the repeal and replacing of the provisions set out under Part 6 of the regulations. We're replacing with new Part 6, which will detail the requirements for ships entering our seaport and processes relating to the issue of the ship sanitation control. And we're also allowing for the examination of the ship by authorized officers for clinical signs, etc., in the event that the certificate is not produced or in any event. Thirdly, we propose the repeal of the 6th schedule and the replacement with a new 6th schedule, which will contain the actual ship sanitation control certificate and ship sanitation control exemption certificate. Fourthly, we are treating with the repeal of the 2nd schedule, replacement with a new 2nd schedule containing the new Declaration of Health, which requires submission of critical health information, persons on board ships, etc. These come about, Madam President, quite simply because Trinidad and Tobago's regulations predate the Health Regulations 2005, where Trinidad and Tobago was treating with the International Health Regulations of 2005. The rest of the world has moved on. The concept of deratification, removal of rats and rodents from ships, has now become a thing of the past. They've gone for a broader extent of sanitation control. We quite recently dealt with the animal health regulations. We also dealt with the animal welfare bill. We were introduced in that legislation and by COVID to the concept of zoonosis, which is the transfer of diseases from animals to humans and vice versa, etc. How real a situation COVID-19 has presented for this country. I'd like to say that the amendment of these regulations and why we're taking them today as quickly as we are, help us quite importantly to make sure that ships that come and go are not subjected to an antiquity that the harbour may not be expecting, that the masters of ships may not be expecting, because when we look to what's happening in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, as our prayers go out to our brothers and sisters there, as our 50th troops have left this morning at 6 a.m., as Minister Young and the Cabinet was up all of last night making sure that the procedures were put into place and approvals were done, there's a clock that does not stop on government schedule. We need to make sure that we can actually bring people in the easiest way possible. And what a better situation than to be on standby for your brothers and sisters in the Caribbean. So again, timing is extremely important. We're very pleased to do these regulations. It's really to bring them up to speed. The Honourable Minister of Health has been hard at work, as the population has seen. Trinidad and Tobago is upfront and personal and very well accustomed to what's going on in the whole COVID pandemic. Our vaccination drive is going on. These regulations help us to harmonize law. I'd like to stick a pin and say, as Attorney General, that I have defended hundreds of pieces of litigation under the COVID pandemic, and we have won all. We have won all of our pieces, notwithstanding in particular the massive amount of litigation brought against the government in COVID by the opposition. In fact, we've had costs awarded in favor of the state as we continue to say that sunlight does not cure COVID, that a dome will not protect this country, that the vaccination rollout is something still to be measured. I, above all, having starred for my 5 minutes of fame, I can attest to COVID fatigue, how people feel under this COVID pandemic, how tired we are of living in the situation that we're in. It's not easy to be on diligent watch 24 hours a day. It's something that we're reminded to do every now and then. We are all human. Nobody is perfect. We need to make sure that we do our very best. This motion takes the maritime regulations, quarantine aspects of it, into the modern situation, and there is no better reason to stand to deliver a motion such as this than for those reasons. In those circumstances, I beg to move.
Honourable members, I shall now propose the question for debate. The question is, whereas it is provided by Section 4 of the Quarantine Act, Chapter 2805, hereinafter referred to as the Act, that the Minister of Health may make regulations with respect to the whole or any part of Trinidad and Tobago, including the ports and coastal waters thereof, for preventing a. danger to public health from ships or aircraft or persons or things therein arriving at any place, and b. the spread of infection by means of any ship or aircraft about to leave any place or by any means of any person or thing. And whereas it is provided by the said Section 4 of the Act that regulations made under this section shall be subject to affirmative resolution of Parliament. And whereas the Minister has on the 4th day of February 2021 made the Quarantine Maritime Amendment Regulations 2021, hereinafter called the regulations, and whereas the regulations were laid in the House of Representatives on the 5th day of February 2021, and whereas it is expedient to approve the regulations, be it resolved that the Quarantine Maritime Amendment Regulations 2021 be approved. Senator Richards.
Thank you, Madam President. Just a short intervention. There are many members of the independent bench who have not had sight of the regulations, even on rotunda. I don't know if that can be facilitated. Thank you.
Yeah, that's
Honourable Senators, I am advised that the regulations are available on the rotunda, and I just want to further point out that these regulations were laid in the Senate on the 9th of February 2021. So they are available on the rotunda. Senator Richards, are you to continue your contribution?
No, thank you. That's just one question, Madam President. Thank you.
Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam President. I beg to move.
Honourable Senators, the question is, be it resolved that the Quarantine Marine Amendment Regulations 2021 be approved. Those in favour say aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. The motion is therefore carried. Honourable Senators, with your leave, I wish to revert to item 14 on the order paper. Acting Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, having regard to the second interim report of the Joint Select Committee appointed to consider and report on the Cannabis Control Bill 2020, First Session 2020-2021 of the 12th Parliament, I beg to move that the committee be granted an extension to May 31st, 2021 to complete its work and submit a final report. Thank you.
Honourable Senators, the question is that the Joint Select Committee appointed to consider and report on the Cannabis Control Bill 2020 be granted an extension to May 31st, 2021 to complete its work and submit a final report. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes. Government Business.
Madam President, I propose that this House do now adjourn to Tuesday, April 20th, 2021 at 1:30 p.m. And at that sitting, the government proposes to move an act to amend the Sexual Offences Act, Chapter 1128. Thank you.
Honourable Senators, before I put the question on the adjournment, leave has been granted for a matter to be raised. Senator Dearnarine.
Thank you, Madam President, for the opportunity to raise this matter on the need for the government to prioritize the collection and publication of up-to-date unemployment and poverty statistics. Madam President, prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, up-to-date data on poverty and unemployment was not being published in a timely fashion. Up to March 23, 2020, when we were entering the lockdown, the most updated data on unemployment was for the third quarter of 2018 at 4.6% at that time. To date, the latest quarterly unemployment figure we have available to us is for quarter one of 2019 at 4%. And the latest annual measurement or annual unemployment rate available for any in-depth analysis is as at 2018 at a rate of 3.9%. Madam President, we are in the second quarter of 2021. More than 2 years later, and we have not seen the publication of the Continuous Sample Survey of the Population, commonly known as the CSSP, by the Central Statistical Office for labor market data for the year 2019 or any quarters of 2020. Madam President, with respect to poverty data, it is even more worrisome. The latest poverty data available to us is for the year 2015, when the last survey of living conditions, more than 15 years ago, was conducted. The 2005 SLC estimated that the percentage of the population living in poverty was at 16.7%. Another SLC was, however, done in 2014, but it was flawed with technical difficulties, warranting the updated version not being worthy of publication. So it was never published. But looking at the Caribbean Economic Bulletin Volume 9, Issue 3, in November 2020, published by the Inter-American Development Bank. They referred to the 2014 Survey of Living Conditions with a poverty rate of 24.5% of the population, indicating that between 2005 and 2014, approximately 117,000 additional persons started living in poverty. But still, Madam President, if the 2014 SLC was published and available, it is still 6 years too old. I question any policy decided on such outdated data. How reliable is it to the current socio-economic conditions today? With this outdated data, we cannot be making comments such as the social agenda, I quote, "The social agenda during the pandemic has averted marginalization and significantly alleviated poverty," as cited in the national budget, the fiscal 2021 package. To deal with the absent data on poverty, the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services have been trying to use workarounds such as inflating the poverty line to give a more realistic point-in-time estimate. This is used to apply the means test to qualify persons for social programs. However, these workabouts should only be temporary and not continued for extended period of time, as it is not consumption-based, as it is not based on consumption-based statistics. Unfortunately, we entered into the COVID-19 pandemic not knowing what proportion of our population were, one, living in extreme poverty, below the poverty line, considered vulnerable, and who were unemployed for at least 2 years when we talk about the unemployment rate, and for more than 10 years when we speak about poverty and the poverty line. Without this data, how does the government intend to ascertain the extent of the damage of the pandemic on various income groups? Example, the middle income earners, women, youth, and the previously already vulnerable population who were falling out of the middle class into vulnerability, and their risk were exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic, their risk to enter poverty. Madam President, timely data on where we stood in terms of poverty and unemployment prior to the COVID-19 pandemic and where we stand now would give policymakers a clear picture on the full extent of damage on labor outcomes and the potential or already existing unequal impact of the crisis on both women, youth, and other vulnerable members of the population. This information allows us to efficiently allocate our very delicate financial resources. Further, to be better able to assess the impact of the government programs against poverty and unemployment, such data is critical. It will help the government understand how different sections of society are managing, and so it can plan for the future, assess the effects of policy changes, measure the effects of policy changes such that public expenditure could be efficiently targeting to dealing with the negative socio-economic consequences. Now, I understand the challenges in conducting surveys, both the CSSP and the Survey of Living Condition, as these are surveys that are done on a face-to-face basis. I understand the challenges doing this during a pandemic. However, Madam President, prior to the pandemic, official data reported on a quarterly or even a monthly or an annual basis have struggled to keep up to pace. Furthermore, a year has passed, giving the Ministry of Planning and Development and the Central Statistical Office ample time to redirect resources to suit the pandemic environment to conduct these surveys. The Office of National Statistics, for example, in the UK, as a result of pandemic, has stopped all face-to-face survey interviewing in the home and are conducting household studies by phone or online, so that when they visit, they reach out to additional homes and they get their addresses and other contact information and update their list so that they can conduct these phone surveys. They also started collecting new information that the government and the public need on a regular basis. They also set up a new dedicated page on their website to enable quick assessment of the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. They are even conducting a survey of living conditions this year, and I believe our Ministry of Planning and Development also has this outlined for this year as well, where they are arranging for interviews during a suitable time to visit the dwelling home and collect face-to-face data using computer-assisted questionnaires. Statistics Canada is another example. They have committed to ensuring the safety of employees and are going ahead with conducting their 2021 census. Statistics Canada census employees is sent in person to a dwelling home, and the employee will be required to wear the necessary protective equipment, as well as maintain proper physical distances in accordance with guidelines from the public health authorities. Going further to give additional examples when we speak about unemployment, Barbados, Costa Rica, Dominican Republic, Jamaica, a lot of other Latin American countries were able to publish up-to-date unemployment data as of 2019 and 2020, given the COVID, even during this pandemic time. By now, in terms of the government's agenda moving towards a digital economy, the Ministry of Planning and Development, Central Statistical Office, and the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services should have a comprehensive plan being executed to move towards the collection of high-frequency data when it comes to tracking the rapid economic disruption such as the COVID-19 pandemic. For many countries, this information has also helped confirm nearly in real time the unequal impact of the crisis. Madam President, I know the public statements about these figures, unemployment and poverty, tend to generate more heat than light, but it is important that the decisions are based on up-to-date, policy decisions are based on up-to-date information, especially when we have a pandemic social response, which cost the government $6 billion, almost amounting to 4% of GDP. I thank you, Madam President.
Minister of Public Administration and Digital Transformation.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, according to the Central Statistical Office, the COVID-19 pandemic affected fieldwork resulted in the non-collection of unemployment data for approximately 6 months. I can personally attest to that because this agency has been working with the Telecommunications Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, which falls under the Ministry of Public Admin and Digital Transformation, to gather information as well to ascertain the digital divide so that in this time when we are so reliant on homeschooling and working from home, we can clearly understand where the gaps are in our digital coverage and address that. However, currently, the CSO is undertaking an intensive field operations exercise to reduce the backlog of unemployment and other data. The collection of relevant unemployment data for the first, second, and third quarters of 2019 was being undertaken up until March 2020 and has been completed. The unemployment tables for the second quarter of 2019 has been produced. The collection of all relevant outstanding unemployment data for the fourth quarter of 2019 to the first quarter of 2021 is planned for completion at the end of July 2021. However, the computation of unemployment data also involves data editing, coding, and processing. The priority will be the completion of the 2020 unemployment tables, as this data will be most relevant. The first and second quarter 2020 unemployment tables are estimated to be completed by June 2021, and the third quarter tables by the end of August 2021. The CSO will, however, continue its efforts at data collection to gradually reduce the backlog of 2019 unemployment figures, third quarter 2019 and fourth quarter 2019. It should be noted that poverty data will emanate from the collection of data from the Household Budget Survey and Survey of Living Conditions. Both surveys are to be carried out jointly in January 2022. And I would like to assure the Senator that while we undertake what continues to be a largely manual exercise, our thrust into the digital world will allow us to more efficiently and effectively continue to carry out surveys despite the occurrence or reoccurrence of pandemics such as the COVID-19. So while we continue to work towards collecting the current data, and we expect to have that available soon, we are working towards more efficient collection of data generally. I thank you, Madam President.
Honourable Senators, the question is that this Senate do now adjourn to Tuesday, April the 20th, 2021 at 1:30 p.m. Those in favour say aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. This Senate now stands adjourned to Tuesday, April the 20th, 2021 at 1:30 p.m.